It's alive. Welcome back to the channel. I usually don't say that. However, we're usually putting out weekly content and we've been slacking on that. We will be getting back to our regular content. However, it's been extremely busy. We've been trying to punch out the drag car, and this video is going to be on the drag car again. Although it looks fairly similar to what it had before, actually it probably looks worse than the last time you guys had seen it. Lots and lots and lots have been done. A lot of final details have been kind of finished up, and we're getting really close to firing this thing up now. I'm going to kind of go through some of the things that we have done. Just stuff that we really didn't point out probably in the last video. We kind of just jumped ahead because we hadn't posted a video in a while and just kind of gave you a whole bunch of stuff at once. But I want to just go through and show you some of the things that we have finalized. Obviously the wiring is still kind of looks like a mess right now, but it's every sensor now has been added to the ECU and calibrated and tested properly. Even the throttle body, so drive-by-wire throttle body this time, that's been done. I just finished the bracket for the cam position sensor. So that's done. We haven't actually tested that yet, but we won't be able to until we start cranking the engine over. Also, the bracket for the transmission, this isn't finalized, but as you can see, we have a bracket going from the back to the front cross member here. So my thought on the the transmission bracket, we had a very similar setup on the old car, which was this ghetto piece that I had done here. It worked very well. We didn't really have much transmission problems until the very last event that we were racing at, and what happened there? The differential locked up and broke, and then broke the axle. Anyways. So what I wanted to do, obviously that looks like trash on this car. I just basically designed something up in Fusion 360, then cut it out on the plasma, welded it all together. I'll show you some of that process, as I did a whole bunch of brackets and stuff for this thing, and just basically been spending a bunch of time drawing it up in Fusion, then cutting it out, then welding it. But the point of this bracket is essentially a couple of reasons. One is just to give extra support on the end of the transmission. Two, on this setup, this front transmission engine mount, when this comes out, basically the engine wants to just fall out of the car. So with this additional bracket in here, we can, if we have to replace the crank sensor, do anything in the front of the car that bracket needs to come out, this will still hold everything up in place. It's not welded in here yet. It's all just loose. I haven't completely finished exactly what I want to do with it, but it goes to the back bracket there. So I got to weld these up. I'm going to tack these in today. And then the plan is that the engine is coming back out of the car again today for the final time. I have to basically tear the transmission down. There was something that I wasn't 100% with the transmission. A couple of the races were a little bit loose, it seemed, so I'm not taking any chances. We're pulling it back out. I have another case already cleaned up, thanks to Connor. It needs to be painted, but it's all cleaned up, ready to go. So I'm gonna get that painted. We're gonna pull the engine and transmission out, and I'm gonna pull the transmission apart and rebuild it. But before we get to that, I'm rambling. Before we get to that, I'm gonna show you some of the stuff that we've gotten done to this point, other than what I've just showed you. Okay, so some of the other stuff that we've gotten done. I had to add a switch for a power button here. I just, again, drew something up on, oops, that's not in focus. Drew something up in Fusion, then added to this mount that we had already had. The wiring in here, for the most part, that you see, these two cables are for the dash and the ECU. The ECU is actually wireless, so once we get moving, this isn't going to be used, and the other one that's connected to the dash right now won't be used either. And then all the rest of the wires that you're seeing in here, you're basically not going to see any of that stuff when we're all done. So it's pretty bare in here at this point, and it's going to look more bare as we continue to move forward with it. I am mounting, I don't know how well you guys can see that, I am mounting the CAN keypad up above here, We have a bracket already made and everything. Again, cut it out in Fusion in the plasma table. This one's just aluminum, and just use some crinkle or wrinkle paint on it. And then, so that's going to go up here. That's why that's just zip tied like that for now. We have all the brake lines done, except the last one we used bulkhead fittings. So everything is clean. So the last line we got to do is right underneath the car after it attaches to that. The slipper, everything is done inside the car, the staging brake, all that stuff. Then out in the engine bay, we have the back pressure sensor wired up and the plumbing for it. I may need to add a little canister here to take out some of the pulses or irregularities in the data, but I think with Nexus we should be able to filter most of that out, so this should be fine. We won't know until we actually get going with it. The slipper's already connected, all plumbed, wired up. Cam sensor already mentioned. All the fueling lines, all the coolant lines, everything is done. Again, it looks really messy right now, but all this, as we continue to move forward and start, you know, getting the thing fired up, we can start wrapping things up totally. Oh, the E-gate, it's just laying here, but that's already been calibrated and tested. All is ready with that. The fueling lines, the ethanol content sensors plumbed in. I had to make another bracket for that. You can kind of see it under there. It's basically bolting on the side of this and then going to bolt to the frame rail. The sensor's not in it yet, but the sensor's going to go in place here. It is on the return line. The fuel, what is this called? Fuel cell. I made this years ago, and it's been modified so many times now. Because we want to be able to drop the plate out the bottom, this filler neck used to come up and come out here a little bit. So we had to cut this off, had to reposition it closer so that it will come right out the bottom. I had to relocate the return line for it to the top. I didn't film any of this, but there's a piece of tubing that goes basically all the way to the bottom so that the fuel's not splashing around in there and causing a bunch of air. It's going to go to the bottom of the tank and just basically fill up from here as it returns in. What else? So we're working on the traction bars. Those are going to go to these spots here on the subframe weight plate. I don't know if that's coming in focus or not. Probably need a light. And then goes over to the control arms, which you can kind of see in there. So I had to cut out my old ones and we're making new ones. We're just basically recycling some of the old parts, the Heim joints and stuff. I have some old dual call pipe that we're going to use to build these traction bars with. Some things that are left to do that are kind of big ticket, but not really big ticket, just pain in the butt items. A battery bracket support for this whole thing. We haven't done anything with that yet. Basically, the weight of the battery is going to sit on the plate is the plan. However, I want to be able to take the plate out and leave the battery in the car so we always have power in there in case of we're testing something with the engine in and this stuff all off. So ideally the weight of it's going to be sitting here, but when the plate's off, it will hold up in place so that the battery terminals and everything can stay connected. When this is all finished, I'm probably going to do a video of everything that's on the car and probably all the sensors and everything that's in it. Right now I'm kind of just rambling to kind of bring you guys up to speed on what's been done and how much work it's involved with doing some of the stuff that we've done to it. But some other things to add is like we have a clutch pressure sensor. So this is going to be in line with the clutch pressure so that as we're using the slipper, we're going to have an idea of what's going on with the pressure and hopefully help us bring down the 60-foot times. The intercooler and radiator, we basically got the gist of where that's going. It just needs to be mounted with some tabs, so that's pretty minor. And then after that, we obviously got to get the car up and running, do a whole bunch of tests for the crank sensor and the cam position sensor, make sure all that's functioning properly, get it timed, get the thing running. However, before that, we got to pull the engine and stuff, as I mentioned, so let's get to that. There one. we're getting to the point we're taking the engine out. I have tacked up the brackets for the transmission. We kind of got an idea what we're doing with the traction bars, but we're going to wait till the engine goes back in the final time. Robbie's already taken the wiring apart. We got a couple other little things done. Robbie's got the wiring done for the battery and stuff now. We got the CAN keypad mounted up in place. And it's time now to take the engine out. Okay, new day. Probably where I left off was tearing the transmission apart. As you can see, the engine's out, and a couple of things we learned taking it out this time. Well, actually, one thing I want to mention, obviously for those that have been following along, I designed this plate to come out and have the fueling system, the fuel tank, the intercooler, the radiator, everything come out all as one, so we can just pull the engine out the front. We didn't do that this time because, as you guys would have seen, I had to tack these and weld these brackets into place. So that needs to happen while it's all in the car so I can make everything fit properly. But some things that we did notice taking the engine out this time is we have EGT sensors that really can't be easily removed from the manifold. They all sit underneath the runners here. And those are going to run through the firewall. At least that's how we initially had it set up. I'll show you the EGT box is right here, and it was going to mount up underneath the dash here. But now that we pulled this out, and that's a little bit time consuming, it's not a big deal, but it's something that as we designed this whole setup, we wanted to kind of streamline it and make it as easy as possible to pull in and out of the car. So I may relocate that outside the car, I don't know, but lesson learned on taking this apart. So now what I got to do is the transmission, as I mentioned, I'm going to use a new bell housing. There was a couple things in this one that I wasn't 100% happy with. So I got to machine out the bell housing to fit the final drive that we're using. And so that's what's going to be next. So follow me along to the mill and we'll machine that out. Oh yeah, some other stuff that I didn't mention. I'll show you some of this stuff being cut up and drawn up on Fusion, but I had to cut some brackets for the rear suspension, the rear shocks or struts. I also made a bracket. This isn't it, this is a redo. I'm doing a new turbo brace. You'll see that as I tack it up and stuff. And this was the first rendition of my transmission mount that was a failure because the axle was gonna run into it, and that's a no bueno. So let's get to doing some work.
David.
Clayton.
David.
It's so close. It's so close. We're so close. We've gone through our tests. The wiring, again, isn't all bundled up or anything like that, but we're leaving it like that until we actually get some runs on the dyno and tests to make sure everything works 100%. But we've gone through, we've calibrated the throttle body, the drive-by-wire throttle body, the E-gate, calibrated all the sensors, the dash is firing up, the CAN keypad works, all the fueling coolant lines, everything, there's coolant in it, well, water in it at this point, and there won't be coolant in it, it'll only be water and water, but, and there's oil in it, so now we gotta try to basically crank it over with the injectors turned off to check base timing, and then once we check base timing, we can try to fire this thing up. Okay, time to check base timing. Clayton's on the timing light. Well, actually, he's gearing up his microphone. And we're about to turn this thing over. Clayton, you tell me how far off we are. Oops. Clayton said it's off by this much, so we're going to change this
I'd say 3 degrees.
3, you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't know which way though.
We're gonna try that.
Want to do 3 degrees?
Yep.
All right.
Ready?
Yep.
Wrong way?
I would say another 3.
Okay, another 3. Well, we're going the right way. That's a good thing. Trying again?
Yep.
Ready?
Yep.
Money?
So close. Nah. Like
Another degree?
maybe one more.
For those watching along, this is the most important step with setting up standalone. You need to make sure your base timing is in sync between the engine and the ECU. Clayton, I'm firing again.
Okay.
Clayton gave you a thumbs up.
Bang on.
Okay, sweet. We're gonna try to fire it up here. I think we got all our ducks in a row. We've synced up the ECU, and I have the injectors back on. We're gonna try to fire it this time. There's nothing in the way from anything.
Nope.
There's oil in it. There's coolant in it. We're good, right?
I think so.
Okay. Well, here we go.
What about this time?
Well, as long as we don't get nothing wrong. Here we go.